to Face, the program
that frontally discusses
political and social issues in Nigeria. The weekly program brought to you on Wednesday by 6 p.m. Nigerian time, anchored by Prince Ewemade Concourse, powered by GCSDN.
Join us.
Good evening from my side of the world, and good morning, good afternoon, depends on what part of the continent you are joining us on this program today. Our topic for today is what are the underlying factors contributing to Africa's enduring state of poverty. Before we continue, I'm going to show an index showing the list of the poorest countries in Africa and our continent, in spite of all the blessings we have, but we are still the poorest continent. I don't know if you can see the index there. The list of countries, poorest countries in Africa. The first 10, I'll start from number 10, which is Liberia. Number 9 is Chad. Number 8 is Malawi. Number 7 is Niger Republic. 6, Mozambique. 5, Democratic Republic of Congo. Somalia. 4, number 3, Central African Republic. Number 2, Burundi. And number 1, South Sudan. In spite of all the mineral resources, everything that God has endowed Africa with, we are still rated as the poorest continent. You can only find most of the poorest countries in Africa. This program, I'm going to be joined by two of our guests. I'm waiting for them to come in, but before then, we need to discuss why is it that in spite of all we have as a continent, we are still very poor. We have everything, just name it. I can name what we have. And what God has blessed Africa with, there's no other continent that have so much mineral resources. Just name it. Lithium for battery, uranium for the power of electricity, oil for electric power and electricity generation, for vehicle, for aircraft. We have everything. We have minerals, we have oil, we have iron, we have everything, In spite of all this, Africa is still the poorest continent. Why is this so? Could it be because of the colonizers who refused to take their hands from the resources of Africa? They continue to exploit everything that we have, bringing it over to their own part of the world to continue to develop their own continent. I think one of my guests just signing now. Let me bring him to the studio. Hello, Honorable Mandodo, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Please introduce yourself and say one or two things to our guests all over the world.
Revolutionary salutations and solidarity. Greetings to you, the people of Africa, the suffering masses of our continent. Thank you so much for joining this YouTube video. I really pay gratitude and honor to all of you from all parts of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure having you. It's my pleasure having you on this program today. We are going to be discussing the underlying factors contributing to Africa's enduring state of poverty. Like I said, the poorest countries on the surface of this earth today, you can find them in Africa. The top 10 are all in Africa. And in spite of all that we have, that God has blessed that continent with, you can begin to name it. It's endless. The list of the resources that we have in Africa is endless. The country that we live here today, for example, I live in the UK. I don't think they have anything beside the technology and the human capital and all that, But Africa, we have what it takes to be the greatest continent upon the surface of this earth. We have what it takes to feed the whole world. We have what it takes to feed, to feed generations yet unborn. That is the kind of blessing that God has blessed African continent with. But in spite of all this, I believe, in my own opinion, I believe there are people who are still trying to hold African down, because the moment Africa begin to realize their potential and begin to develop, and I don't think they will be traveling to any part of the world to seek for loan, for foreign aid and all that. And if you also look at it very well, closely, most of this aid that is being given to Africa is like a little of what they've stolen. That is my own opinion. A little of what they've stolen. Like they've stolen so much amount of wealth from Africa, but they only give back a peanut in form of a loan back to those continents, which is really, 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 bad. Well, in your own opinion, what are the fundamental elements that contribute to the persistent state of poverty in Africa, my brother?
Thank you so much, leaders, Your Excellencies, honorable members, for proffering this opportunity to cross-pollinate ideas and to discuss issues pertaining our continent. The subject of poverty is quite relevant in our continent. I've been looking on several summits, expos, symposiums, and workshops that are being launched in our continent, that are being attended by delegates and dignitaries. And I've perused over and realized that the subject of poverty is one of the subjects that is being discussed, is a topical issue in our continent. So the question, the million-dollar question today is, why Africa is poor? Your Excellency, that is the million-dollar question. So in my library, I've tried to look several books to answer this question, why Africa is poor. So on the question of poverty, my first book was by Walter Rodney, which was published in 1972, the book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. So two sacrosanct reasons have been forwarded to this copy as his submission, that is colonialism and slavery. So as Ngugi Wationg expressed it, colonialism and slavery has been two major causes for the state of Africa we are witnessing today. So, but apart from colonialism and slavery, which are historical causes, we know the loopholes of this theory, which substantiated that colonialism and slavery has been the major causes for the poverty we are witnessing in Africa. But I've interviewed my dear friend who is serving at Amnesty International at the global office. He said that, honorable, this present juncture in Africa, actually, three points has been responsible for the state of poverty in Africa. So he mentioned these points as triple C, that are corruption, conflict, and coronavirus in the recent past. So the subject of corruption, conflict, and coronavirus has not been discussed in academic cycles, but they are quite very relevant in the discourse of poverty in Africa. But apart from this, I know we have other scholars like Robinson and Osemel in their book, Why Nations Fail. They said that absolutist extractive institutions in the continent are responsible for the state of poverty in Africa. They were also citing issues like the Sino-Africa relation, where as the Chinese are coming as our all-weather friends. But at this present juncture, we've witnessed that the Chinese have been responsible for the state of poverty we are witnessing in the continent due to the illicit financial flows and externalization of resources. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Let me also, that are my submissions at this present juncture. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you are just joining us on this program, our topic for today is what are the underlying factors contributing to Africa's enduring state of poverty? You are also part of this discussion for today. You can send us your comment. Go on the comment section on the Facebook. On the YouTube, and you can send us your comment, and we'll gladly read your comment loud. Africa is so blessed, like I said. We are a blessed continent, but those who, the colonizers who have refused to let African go or allow African to breathe, I think that would be the best word to describe it. They refuse to allow African as a nation, as a continent, Africa as a continent to breathe, and its citizens as well. They continue to deprive us of the good education, potable water, constant electricity, good roads, by continuing to empower those, their puppet, who are leaders of some of these countries, to continue in collaboration with them to siphon our God-given resources that would have enabled African citizens to develop itself and live comfortably without having to travel out of their continent in search of greener pastures. Most Africans are displaced all over the world today because of the underdevelopment in Africa. If you look at Dubai, for example, Dubai only have oil. The kind of oil Dubai have is not even 1/3 or a fraction of what Nigeria as a country have. The oil they use to develop Dubai today is not even up to the gold, the diamond, the gold in Ghana, the Gold Coast, or the diamond in Sierra Leone, or the diamond in Congo Brazzaville. But in spite of all this, look at where we are. Look at Dubai today. Dubai, it's a country that their citizens, they do not have to struggle like the Africans from the African nations. Let me take the Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia also in as an example. If you look at those countries, what they have, the oil that they have that they used to develop their country is not even up to what one country in Africa is sitting upon. And in spite of all this, look at where we are as a continent. So I think it's about time for the colonizers, the slave masters and all that. It's about time for them to let African breathe, because that will be our next line of action. Allow African to breathe. Allow African to breathe. They need to breathe. We are not breathing at the moment. And we cannot continue to live like this. We cannot continue to live like this because we are so blessed. We are not supposed to be, here and there, scattered all over the world in search of greener pasture, where we have pasture and greener in our own land, in the land of Africa. We have milk and honey. In spite of all this, we are still searching. So we cannot continue like this. Our people, it is about time that we all stand up, irrespective of the country you are residing in. I am calling on you from United States, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Europe, all over Europe, calling on all Africans. Rise up. It's about time for you to continue to speak up. But nothing is going to happen to you. Don't be afraid that they are going to come after you or they are going to kill you, because we have the right to speak. It is our God-given right. We need to continue to use our voice. If you can speak. If you can write. If you can make a video. It is about time for Africa to stand up. The citizens of Africa, it is about time for you to rise up. This is our time to shine. We cannot continue to allow the Western world to continue to sit on our nose, sit on our neck, that we cannot breathe. They need to allow us to breathe. We are so blessed to be begging for peanut and crumbs from all over the world. We are so blessed. If you want to open up, if you want to export oil, come and set up a refinery in Nigeria or in any of the countries that have oil. If you want gold, go and set up a gold factory in any of those countries that have gold, gold in their reserve. If you want lithium, go and set up the battery factory there. Whatever you want from Africa, go and set up industry in Africa. You cannot continue to make Africa and expect us to the sons of Africa to be quiet. Enough of this rubbish. We are not going to take it anymore. We are going to continue to speak until you allow Africans to breathe. My wonderful audience, as I was just speaking, I have another guest that just joined us. Let me bring him to the studio. Comrade Pigbin, you are welcome to the studio, sir. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you, comrade. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much for being part of this program today. Introduce yourself and tell our audience where you joining the program from.
Thank you very much. My name is Pigino Dimwengu. I am from Kenya. I am a politician. Was former presidential aspirant. I'm a Pan-African and I'm a revolutionary, as you can see. I'm a true believer in spirit and in action that Africa needs revolution, and it is mental revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our topic for today is what are the underlying factors contributing to Africa's enduring state of poverty? I'm going to ask you the same question. What are the fundamental elements that contribute to the persistent state of poverty in Africa?
Thank you very much. I'll say that Africa has everything else to make it rich. Everything. The only thing Africa is lacking is misuse of our resources. And this is, of course, from the leadership aspect of failure from the leadership to use our resources. And this has also led from plundering and looting of our resources. For example, Africa has most richest people in the world. And that confirms that Africa is rich, it's not poor. In fact, they say Africa is not poor. It is the people in Africa who are poor, not Africa itself. And therefore, it takes us back to, of course, reasons that they give in terms of climatical changes, war and crisis and those other things. Those are not enough reasons. Africa is poor simply because of misuse and looting of its resources by the leadership and by the neo-colonials who are continuing to underdevelop Africa. That's the only reason why Africa is poor.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can't dispute that at all, because is when I look at the situation of we Africa as an African, it is very disheartening that in spite of all that God has blessed that continent with, look at all the continents across the globe and tell me which continent that is richer than Africa. There is none. There is none. Look all the way from East Africa to West Africa to South Africa to North Africa. Just look around the continent. There's so much amount of weight that no son of Africa or daughter of Africa that need to travel in search of greener pasture, because we are so blessed. We have what it takes to be the greatest continent upon this earth. But in spite of all this, the colonizer left. They gave us freedom. But today, are we still free as a continent? No, we are not free, because they gave us freedom with one hand. The other hand is still attached to Africa, drilling all the resources through the back door with the help of the enablers of our each countries, which is the leaders, their puppet. They are enabling them to steal through the back door, thereby impoverish the people of Africa. How long will we continue to live in abject poverty? How long will Africa continue to be rated as the poorest continent on the surface of this earth? How long will they continue to give us the most 10 poorest country in the world? Africa will take the top chart. This cannot continue like this. It is about time for sons and daughters of Africa to rise up and speak with one voice. Enough is enough. If we have to hold protests across the world to tell the Western nations to allow Africans to breathe, I think we should follow that path. It is about time for them to allow us to breathe, allow us to develop with what we are, with what God has blessed us with. We didn't choose to be born Africa. It was by destiny, by common destiny, that all sons and daughters of Africa were born in Africa. It is by common destiny. The Europeans were born Europeans. The Americans were born Americans. The Asians were born Asians. The Middle Easterns were born Middle Easterns. God planted the fruit of the African children upon the soil of Africa. We didn't choose to be there, to be born Africa. So why must we continue to be enslaved? Why must we, the sons and daughters of Africa, from generation to generation, continue to escape the dungeon of suffering, the dungeon of greener pasture? Why must we continue to escape, to go to another man's land and do what we are supposed to be doing in our country? That takes me to my next question. How can we effectively, this question is for you, Comrade Mandodo. How can we effectively tackle the root cause of underdevelopment in almost all Africa countries?
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. The quest for addressing poverty in Africa, or efforts to liberate Africa from the whims and caprices of sorry, my network is quite bad from this end. Right?
Yeah, that's fine. We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much. There are a plethora of points we can buttress or we can allude in our effort to end poverty in Africa. Some of these points, you can find them in the library, such as decolonizing the mind, as has been advocated by academics such as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, as well as the other one, like Professor Sabelo Ndlovu-Gacheni is also moving with his discourse of decoloniality. So, in their paradigm, they said that poverty in Africa is a state of mind. Why? Because Africa is all the natural resources, is naturally endowed with resources for us to move forward. Because since after decolonization, we've been eyeing for the rise of a tiger, African tiger, which could rise with a speed tantamount to the speed excelled by the East Asian countries. So, to some of us, the rise of African tigers has remained a pipe dream. The rise of African tigers has remained a mirage. Why? Because soon after decolonization, Africa has been stagnated. Africa has failed to liberate itself. Africa has failed to industrialize. Actually, Africa de-industrialized soon after decolonization. So, what is to be done, comrades? Because you and I, my dear beloved brother, you know that there's no electricity in almost parts of Africa. There's no medicine in peripheral hospitals of African nations. There are no doctors in Africa. Africa is suffering from brain drain. Youths are moving from this continent. Everywhere, everything, the economy is in shambles. Nothing is moving forward. Politics are in shambles. We have elections that are contested each and every time. We have conflict, wars. We have the rise of terrorism, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, etc. We have pandemics and epidemics that are in our continent. Outbreaks of cholera, medieval diseases, we are failing to keep them in our continent. Imagine, my dear beloved brother, doctors in Africa, they are failing to keep malaria. Imagine, my dear beloved brother, we have no pharmaceuticals, we have no medicines in our hospitals, but we have pharmacists in our continent. We are failing to feed ourselves, but we have farmers in our continent. we feel pathetic by this current state of Africa. But as my dear beloved brother has been saying, that governance is the axle in which all problems are emanating. The problem with Africa is not economics. The problem with Africa is not the business. The problem is in Africa is leadership. Africa is suffering from what we are calling right now leadership deficit. So my dear beloved friend and brother, let's sort out the question of leadership in Africa. We are tired of leadership vacuum in our continent. So leadership, my dear beloved brother, is pig bin. Let's sort out leadership in this continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The same questions to you, Comrade Pigbin.
Okay, thank you. I think we must understand one thing. There are people who have refused to grow up. The West have been sucking Mother Africa and breastfeeded by Mother Africa for so long. It is time that they must mature and man up. They can no longer be sucking African every day and every night forever. They took our forefathers, our ancestors who went there to develop their countries. They have never paid us for that. Despite of the slave owners being paid when the slavery was abolished, the slaves were never paid. We are the people who develop US. We are the people who develop Britain. They owe us. They have never paid us for this. We are fighting for restitution and reparation, and they must pay us for that. But funny thing is that they have never man up enough. They are still breastfeeding on Africa until when? It is appearing that they are not ready to man up. They are not ready to grow up. They want to continue feeding on Africa and feeding forever. And we must say no to this. In the book Black Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams said very well that despite of people getting physical freedom, Africa has remained to be voluntarily, mentally enslaved. Why should we be walking out of Africa and dying in Mediterranean Sea? Why? Why should we be going through Western education at the expense of our education? Why should we value Western languages more than our language? Why should we value their democracy? Why should we value their fiat currencies and their money system? Why? Why should we value their dollar? It is us who have actually chose to be mentally slaved or enslaved. And this must stop. If you read ISIS Papers, Keys to Color, you see that we must decode the white supremacy system. And this is a system that if we are able to decode it, we can be free. But as per now, we are still in that coded system. They control our politics, our education, our economics, our life, everything, every sector. So in order for Africa to be free, it must first of all actually decolonize the Western system in Africa. Second thing, Africa must man up enough to tell all whites to go back to where they come from. Africa for Africans, the vision of Marcus Garvey must come true. And all Africans who are abroad, who ran away from Africa, others were taken by force, or others went due to circumstances, must come back now to Africa. This was the theme for African freedom in 1958 during the conference in Addis Ababa, the first Pan-African conference. Marcus Garvey died preaching and claiming that Africans must go back for Africa and Africa must be for Africa. How can we develop when our best doctors are out there? All medicine they use come from Africa, but where are our doctors? What we call, of course, brain drain must stop. So Africans and Pan-Africans must come back to Africa to develop Africa. We must do away with puppet leadership. Even though the white man disappeared from Africa, he left a black white man in Africa in the name of presidents and puppets. These are the people that we must bring down in all means necessary. If it takes military coup, we must bring them down. If it takes their fake perpetual democracy, we must bring them down. Because now we are having black brothers who are sucking our blood for the benefit of their masters. And that must stop. So Africans have become enemy to themselves. I say today Africa is at war. War in Cameroon, war in Niger, war in Congo, war in Sudan. Africa is at war with herself, but not for herself, for the Western puppet countries. We must stop depending on loans and IMF and development, whatever. because those loans are not actually to aid us to be free. Those loans are after making us to be slaves forever. We don't need loans. In fact, the loans must be cancelled. We need payment and reparations for whatever atrocity they did for Africa. But Africa must now start realizing and be confident enough. As the words of Kwame Nkrumah, we never look west or east. We must look forward as Africa. Let's check on how do we have a collaborative mechanism. And that's why Nkrumah gave a simple structure in his philosophy and ideology called consciousness, which is the philosophy and ideology of Nkrumah for decolonization of Africa. He says that Africa must liberate itself, and then the liberated territory must unite. There's nothing we can do in Africa if we will not be united and form United Nations of Africa. As long as we are weak and one country alone, they'll always fight us and penetrate to us. If you have to know the reason and the advantage of unity, America fought their civil war to unite. Africa must now be united to be one. If you are not one, they'll pass through different territories and different countries. They'll create through different puppets, leaders, and even now they are training the next generation of leaders. What are we doing? The white man is busy with a plan, program, and funding to continue colonizing us and decolonizing us. We are not going that direction. So for order for Africa to be free and be developed, Pan-Africans must sit down and start putting a clear plan or implementing the plan that was set by the former Pan-African leaders to actually liberate ourselves and develop ourselves. We need one system. River Congo can tap energy for all Africa. We only need all African countries to invest in River Congo for energy in all Africa. You see, we have a lot of resources. The forest is here. Let's develop as a continental scale. Let's stop looking for country development. Let's look at a continental scale development and all countries to pull together to develop the continent alone. We must actually start depending on ourselves. As long as we depend on the West and those puppet leaders they put through the democracies, we will forever be enslaved and will never develop. For example, we have governments today, but where is the public services? In Nigeria or in Kenya, there's no public school, there's no public hospital. Everything else has gone to private. So we must wake up, and we can do it. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much, my brother. If you are just joining us on this program, our topic for today is what are the underlying factors contributing to the African enduring state of poverty? That is our discussion for today. Like my brother said, in the words of Kwame Nkrumah, we shouldn't look east or west, but we must look Africa. And in order for us to look Africa, all sons and daughters of Africa must begin to speak. They must rise up from your comfort zone. Yes, I'm in UK. This is a comfort zone, but that doesn't seal my mouth not to speak. I am living in their country does not mean I cannot speak. You are living in Canada, in the United States, New Zealand, Europe, you can also do the same thing. You can speak up. The more we begin to speak up, the more our voice will begin to be heard in every nook and cranny of the world. Just like when George Floyd was killed by the KKK police officer. The world understood one thing, that the all black, everybody united across the globe. They came out en masse to protest against the killing of the black man in the United States. So we as an Africans, we must also do the same thing now. It is about time for us to speak up, to tell the West, allow Africans to breathe. Africans must be allowed to breathe. In doing so, take off your filthy hand from the wealth of Africa. Stop extracting or exploiting or looting our minerals and resources through the back door. If you go to Nigeria, for example, you see a lot of tankers stealing oil from the shores of Africa. You see Chinese people coming to Nigeria to mine gold and diamond and all that through the back door. If you dare try that in China, you'll be executed. Africans must be allowed to breathe. It's about time. Let's move on to the next question. This for you, Comrade Pigbin. I'll give that to you first. Do sustainable solutions exist to address these challenges?
Yes. The key sustainable solution is if we fix our leadership. No matter how long we continue to ignore the leadership of Africa, if we don't fix it, we will not have a solution. And the permanent solution to this problem is if Africa totally unites to be one. We don't deserve 55 countries in Africa. In order to continue exploiting and using our resources for our benefit, Africa must be into one unity government. Because we have seen Nkrumah tried to develop Ghana, but what happened? They came for him because it was Ghana. Sankara tried to develop Burkina Faso. What happened? They came for him. They took away Gaddafi. But if it was one united African nation, nobody could dare touch a leader of 1 billion people. Everybody will gang up against them. So the sustainable permanent solution for the problems of Africa is the unity of Africa. Our strength, our solution lies on our unity. We must unite or we perish, to the words of Kwame Nkrumah. Unite or perish. If we don't unite, we are not going to survive. But in that unity, we must fix the leadership of Africa. If we don't fix the leadership of Africa, we will not go anywhere. Look at Africa today. We have people who have stayed in power for 30 years and above. They have never really interested to leave. They are continuing to be agents of the West, to continue exploiting their country. These are people we call liberal Pan-Africans. People only think of themselves and their family. They are liberal Pan-Africans. They are not progressive Pan-Africans. They are not radical of Pan-Africans. We have 3 categories of Pan-Africans. We have the liberal Pan-Africans who only think of themselves. We have the conservative Pan-Africans who only think of their family and their nationality. Then we have progressive radical Pan-Africans, where Nkrumah belongs and where I belong. People who think about Africa at a continental scale and for the benefit and development of Africa. Nkrumah says in his book, Still Consciousness, that we must develop Africa through what he calls scientific socialism. That's why the philosophy and ideology of Nkrumah, what he called consciousnism, is the philosophy for development of Africa. We cannot develop Africa at a capitalist scale or capitalist mentality. Because capitalist mentality do not take into consideration our communal or our social well-being. Africans are social, they are not capitalist. Africans after their affairs, Ubuntu system. We are not after who is rich. But most of Africans today become capitalist. That's why we have rich men Africans and poor men Africans in the same continent. One thing we must know, no matter how rich you are, no matter where you are, if Africa is not great, nobody will respect you. Until Africa is great, they will respect you. No matter the name you are called, even if you are called George like them, they call themselves George and you're George, they will still step on your neck like George Floyd. They will never care that you share the same name with them. They will only respect us the day Africa will be developed and Africa will be great. That's the only day we'll get respect. Chinese are respected all over the world. They were colonized and Indians were colonized, but they respected their culture and their tradition. We were colonized. Why don't you go to African tradition? Why are we Christian, Muslims, or Ugandan, Kenyan, or whatever names? We must do away with those borders. Until we start doing away with those borders of whether Kenyan or whatever, until we start looking at each other beyond the religious lines and lenses, we will never develop. So we must first of all do away with the Western and your colonialism totally. Then from there, we must think of the unity as the only solution for our salvation. We either unite or we perish. As simple as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The same, your opinion, Comrade McDodo.
Yes. Kindly wait a moment. The document is loading in my laptop. Just give me 2 minutes, Your Excellency.
No problem. If you are just joining us on this program, please subscribe. Share and subscribe so you can always be part of the. You can always be part of this weekly program. We are going to be coming to your way with a lot of good news from Africa, from the continent of Africa, how we are going to make Africa great again. Also, we need to start advocating for the Western nation to allow African to breathe. We need to breathe as a continent. We need to breathe as an individual nation within the African territories. We need to breathe. That's the message going forward. Africans need to breathe. Africans need to breathe. Take off your filthy hand from our resources in Africa. Stop exploiting our mineral resources, God-given, resources. Those are for the sons and daughters of Africa, for us to develop ourselves. And you are also part of those that our enablers from Africa continent, which is our leaders. they enable you to do all this, commit all these atrocities against the continent of Africa. We cannot continue like this. I think our brother is having let's move on. Let's move on to the final question. What is the reason behind the presence of French soldiers in Africa?
It is only for one reason. The same with all military bases in Africa, is to continue looting Africa. Nothing else. We don't need their protection. They pretend that they are protecting us against ISIS and nonsense. Let them go protect their people. They are in Africa for one simple reason, to continue exploiting and milking Africa. We don't need any military bases in Africa. Africa must breathe. We don't need any military bases in Africa. The US must pack their military bases back to where they come from. The Wagner from Russia must stop instilling their military bases in Africa. The French must leave Africa totally with their military bases. There's nothing they are after apart from spying on our leadership, spying on our government, to kill our people, to plot coups, and to exploit our resources. We will not allow that. That is the reason, clear reason. Nothing else. We have not asked for protection. Africa needs its own united military force for Africa. Own united military force for Africa. But Africa Union is a puppet, toothless bulldog funded by the West. It's a system of the West that is here in the name of African unity. AU must be disbanded first of all. AU must be disbanded first of all. Then all military bases in Africa must leave Africa. We don't need French in Africa. We don't need US in Africa. We don't need the UKs in Africa. We don't need their military bases in Africa. They must stop training our leaders in the name of training of our military bases. They must stop funding our leaders and military leaders. They must stop it. We have history. I'm doing the coup history in Africa. Over half of the coup histories in Africa have been done by the military officers who are trained by the West. So are they being trained to overthrow African governments? Are they being trained to destabilize Africa? The UN peace security was in Congo for how many years? The only thing they were doing in Congo is to exploit minerals from Congo until the Congolese send them away. We don't need any foreign body to protect us in Africa. We need African soldiers to protect Africa, and we only need that. So they are in Africa for simple reason, to exploit, to continue exploiting and exploiting, conducting coup and doing their CIA agents and MI6 agents in Africa. We don't need them. And if they don't leave, we will demonstrate. They must give Africa space to breathe. They have held us for so long. It's time for them to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My brother, comrade McDodo is back. Do you want to answer the previous question, or I should move on to the next?
The previous question, I'd like to hear the previous question. What he was?
Do sustainable solutions exist to address these challenges?
To a large extent, yes, sustainable solutions exist. But the problem is that when sustainable solutions are being proffered from outside, currently we are discussing about the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. 17 of them, yes. We have problems in domesticating sustainable development goals. They work, but the problems that they are generated from outside, they are superimposed to Africans. They come as one-size-fits-all policies. So we have problems that, so sustainable solutions should be Pan-African. What is required right now is not the IMF and the World Bank. What is required at this present juncture to solve this mess in Africa is not the United Nations. Yes, we meet each year at the UN headquarters, but wars are continuing in Africa. Guns are blazing in parts of the continent. Coups are occurring in the continent. Elections are being rigged in the continent. Securocratic regimes are surviving in the continent. Banana Republic are in power in the continent. So what is required at this present juncture
is a Pan-African solution, what has been elaborated by my dear beloved brother. So at this present juncture, Your Excellency, we are calling for a paradigm shift to a neo-Pan-African solution. So at this hypernescence of globalization, we are calling that Africa must unite, as what has been already propounded by our dear beloved brother, Dr. Nguruma. So let us delink ourselves from the neo-colonial powers. Let us also distance ourselves from the IMF and the World Bank. So what we are going to launch at this present juncture, if we are to end poverty in Africa, Your Excellency, is a paradigm shift. We have to inculcate tenets of Pan-Africanism in the aspect or in the philosophy of Ubuntu. So that is a Pan-African state paradigm that has been discussed all along. And my dear beloved brother and my Dr. Godfrey Kanyenze is quite clear in their book, which is called The Answer, Alternatives to Neoliberal Solutions in Southern Africa. That points are already there. Points have been articulated by academics, and it has been articulated as well by rising politicians, not these who are occupying the African Union at this present juncture. So these are sustainable solutions that we would like to work on. So let us move to the next question, whilst we'll be polishing up these points. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Before you reconnected back to the program, I just asked my brother, comrade Pigbin, what are the reasons behind the presence of the French soldiers? Some of the things they highlighted. You see, we do not have Nigerian soldier or Nigerian base in United States. We do not have the Kenya military base in Europe. We do not have the Zimbabwe or South African military base in UK. Why is it that we have all this military base from the Western, from the colonizers? We have their military base all over Africa. Well, I mean, what are they doing there? You know, so I would like to get your opinion, Comrade McDodo. What are the reasons behind the French soldiers in Africa?
The reasons are uncalled for. The reasons are uncouth. As you have elaborated earlier on, that we have no any military base in Europe, in the United States, even in the Middle East. No African country has a military base. What we do here are just embassies. But if you look the presence of the military in the continent is quite disturbing. And this is just because of three reasons, which we have been calling neo-reasons. We have neo-colonialism, that is the reason. And my point of departure to articulate this point is that, guys, let us come up with a Pan-African solution. Let us come up with a Pan-African paradigm shift solution philosophy. So they are serving nothing else rather than dictatorship. They are serving nothing else rather than authoritarianism and totalitarianism. They are serving nothing else other than.
Let me stop you there. We're almost out of time. We'll just use the next 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes to give us your closing remark, please. Honorable Mandodo, your closing remark.
Okay, thank you so much, Your Excellency, for giving me this time to wrap up as well as to proffer some closing remarks to this session. Right, my closing remark at this present juncture is that let us also advocate for a Pan-African monocurrency. This is an unfinished project from His Excellency Muammar Gaddafi. That let us have a petro dinner to counter the American dollar, which is also taking hegemony in the financial activities of our continent. Let us also come up with buffer zones to any geopolitical penetration by outsiders in the continent. Africa is currently divided, but let's unite. Let's unite so that we create a buffer zone, so that we protect Africa from the penetration by these geopolitical interests. Russia is interested in Africa. It's also Africa Summit. America is also interested in the continent. We have the United States Africa Summit. China is also interested in the continent. So let's unite and come up with a buffer zone to protect our continent. Also, let's come up. Let's deal with our housekeeping issues, especially issues to do with the debts in our continent. Yes. We might say Abasha, IMF, and the World Bank, but our finance ministers are going to Paris with begging Bowel. They are going to the Bretton Woods institutions with the begging Bowel. So let's deal with our fiscals, like to solve the fiscal issues, like issues to do with the housekeeping issues, like issues to balance our books. Because if we do not have money to invest, let us not borrow. Because there's never been a country which has been developed through borrowing. Even through FDI, again, I was reading books, there's never been a country which has been developed through foreign direct investment. Yes, our finance ministers are all over in Europe, in London, in Berlin, whatsoever, looking for foreign investors. Let us come home and use our natural resources. Africa is blessed with the natural resources. It's naturally endowed with the vast natural resources.
Thank you so much, Comrade Pigbin. Your closing remark, please.
My closing remarks will be very brief. One, let's think Africa. Let's live Africa, let's drink Africa, let's speak Africa, let's worship Africanize, and let's speak and act Africa. Let's promote Africa for Africa. Let's preach unification of Africa, and let's down the colonial boundaries and imperial boundaries. Let's down their colonial religion and imperial religions. Let's down their colonial systems and the Babylonian system. And let's actually come back to invest in Africa and develop Africa. No one will save Africa apart from ourselves.
Yes.
If Africa fail, we'll go down. If Africa fail, we will go down. But with them, they'll go back to their countries. Where will we go to? If today Africa fail, where will we run to? So let's come back, invest in Africa, and let's actually deal with their puppet leaders in Africa in any means necessary. If it is democratically, let's deal with them. If democracy is not working, let's go what the Niger is doing militarily. In all means possible, we must do away with the West. We must send them away packing. We must not allow them to continue exploiting us. And to the next generation and my younger generation, let's rise up. Let's rise up for Mother Africa. Let's rise up for Mother Africa. No one is going to rise up on our behalf apart from ourselves. Nkrumah and our ancestors died for Africa. What will our generation be counted for? Our unity is the only solution. It's time for unity and unity for action. Nothing else. So let's come together, let's liberate Africa, and let's make Africa great. Thank you all, comrades. I salute you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time out to be a part of this program today. My audience all over the world, I thank you all for being a part of this program. I have two statements I would like to make before I close the program. One, there's this saying that people always say that if we speak, we'll die. If we don't speak, we'll die. For me, I don't believe if we speak, we are going to die. We are going to live to see the African of our dream. Also, it is crucial for all of us to come together and start questioning the status quo. Why also taking necessary action? It is also important to understand that the poverty we face, it is not natural occurrences, but rather a result of artificial factor. On this note, I would like to end the program. I say have a good evening wherever you are, or good morning, or good night. Thank you, Comrade Pigbin and Comrade Mandodo, for being part of this program today.